welcome to Communicating Capital, where we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights from leaders shaping the future of business, technology, and beyond. Today on Communicating Capital, we're diving into one of the most fascinating transformations in business today, where food, culture, and finance intersect. Our guest, Norma Chu, is the founder, chairwoman, and CEO of DDC, a company that has grown from a beloved Asian food and lifestyle platform into a global publicly traded company, and it's one of the leaders that are in the corporate Bitcoin treasury revolution. Under Norma's leadership, DDC has delivered record financial results, achieved profitability, and strategically positioned Bitcoin as a core reserve asset. In fact, Norma is targeting 10,000 Bitcoin, and she might surpass that goal sooner than we think. She's not only reimagining capital allocation, but she's redefining what it means to build value in a digital age. Norma, welcome to Communicating Capital. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So excited. We're going to dive right in because you've built DDC into this beloved global food brand, but then there was this inflection point where you pivoted into Bitcoin. And so I want to learn what gave you the conviction to make that leap.
Oh, yeah. I built this business for about 13 years. And this year, when we announced going into Bitcoin Treasury strategy in May, definitely seems to be a very big, unexpected move. I think I was very fortunate last year. I was orange pilled by one of my very good friend and long-term investor in DDC in the summer of last year in 2024. Um, Acquiring businesses has always been part of DDC growth strategy, even before we listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So when I was catching up with this friend, I was telling him how excited I was. I was looking at all these different M&A opportunities, and we're looking to acquire another business. But then he looked at me. He's like, Norma, I've observed your journey for the past 10 years, and you're so hardworking, but think outside of the box, right? He's like, other than just looking to acquire traditional businesses, he pointed me to the direction to think about acquiring Bitcoin with the listed company as part of the treasury strategy. And so, that's kind of the moment where he brought me down the orange rabbit hole, if you will. And I think the conviction really came from me doing, a lot of deep dive and understanding the whole strategy playbook and really understanding what holding Bitcoin on our balance sheets can help us achieve as part of a fast-growing, forward-thinking company. The Bitcoin's decentralized nature promotes, transparency, resilience, and also resistance against external manipulation. So holding Bitcoin can help us remove counterparty risk, like, simply holding cash and bonds cannot. And I think as a company, when we think about treasury management, it is more than just about preservation of value, but it can also be about capital appreciation. So holding Bitcoin is, in a way, effectively future-proofing DDC against inflationary pressure and also currency devaluation risks, especially in the current macro environment. And I think finally, just adding Bitcoin as a treasury assets give us a really powerful narrative. It positions DDC as not just someone who's really passive about preserving value, but we are also proactively embracing transformation as a company. And I think that's kind of like the core company culture that I value from for DDC since the very beginning. We've gone through different cycles. We go through we've built the business in different markets, and so having that culture of embracing transformation really help us recruit the right talent to join the team and also build a much stronger partnership network to ensure, long-term success as we continue to exit on the Bitcoin accumulation strategy.
So exciting. And I can't believe it's so from the summer of 2024 to now, I believe you hold 1,083 Bitcoins. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just saw that on one of your press releases.
Yeah, that's correct. 1,083.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And we all know that you have plans to surpass 10,000 Bitcoin as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what's unique about your accumulation strategy compared to peers?
Sure. Like I've been thinking about how to summarize the way we think about Bitcoin accumulation strategy, and I came up with this term, like which is like a three-pronged approach, and I call it the CBD approach. It's essentially capital formation, Bitcoin accumulation, and distribution, and that they are equally important in order for, I think, for a Bitcoin treasury company to have long-term continued success. I think the first part is, capital formation. And that is probably, I would say, one of the most critical components because, without access to capital, you can really continue to build the stack. But that's also important for, I think, for DDC, our management team. We are extremely mindful in terms of every single fundraise. Like, who are we inviting as our investor supporting us on this journey? Who are we inviting onto the cap table? And how does that, whole race come together? So that's the first piece of our approach, which is being mindful in terms of fundraising. Second piece is, Bitcoin accumulation. I think on surface, a lot of people look at DATs in general. It's about raising funds in public markets and just buying the token of choice. But I think, when we think about Bitcoin accumulation, we tend to and try to spend a lot of times in terms of exploring venue where we can acquire Bitcoin in a more frictionless approach. So, right now, potentially working with, upstream partners that also, have needs to liquidate some of their Bitcoins, and also potentially look at, larger Bitcoin holders that can either also join our cap table at the same time selling Bitcoin to DDC. So, we look at ways to differentiate ourselves, and as we think about how do we acquire our Bitcoin. Finally, is the distribution. And, distribution for us is about, continuing to share our story, our journey with, the community on X, and me being very active on podcasts, and really glad to have these opportunities to, speak to you today and also share our journey. And, I think having a retail distribution is important. And we're very fortunate to work with several highly well-regarded thought leaders in the Bitcoin space, ranging from Tim Kosman, Adrian Morris, Lamar to Max. They're just fantastic people to have on the DDC advisory network. And then on the institutional side, right now we're covered by Maxim Group, and we hope to, expand our research coverage on Wall Street over the next few months. Hopefully, more and more institutional investors will also be able to track, what we're doing here at DDC through a lot of research reports done by analysts.
I love that you're talking about institutional investors because when you're communicating your strategy to traditional shareholders, to the community that's on X, to institutional investors, I feel like it might differ a little bit. How are you communicating to all of these different groups?
That is so true. Sometimes it's very different in terms of the knowledge base and also what they're focused on. I think when we talk to more traditional investors, we tend to start with how, our view on Bitcoin, right? Our long-term view on this asset class. And by long-term is definitely more than 12 months. I've been this business for 13 years. When I think long-term, I'm like, okay, we're gonna be in this and embark on this journey for the next 5, 10, 15-year plus. Um, and highlighting all the positive, characteristics of Bitcoin as an asset class, right? All the things that I mentioned earlier. And I think, most TradFi investors might not be so used to the high volatility associated with Bitcoin, but it's just a matter of, how they choose to, access Bitcoin as part of their investment portfolio. And I think Bitcoin treasury companies can serve as like a great conduit for them to get some Bitcoin exposure, especially for, the investor group that are less familiar, right? Because it's basically investing and trading in a framework they're a lot more familiar with, right, in the U.S. equities market. And finally, what we share is, we do have a growing, profitable underlying food business. And so I think that serves as a great cushion, especially during potential Bitcoin down cycle, that will resonate with, TradFi investors, that we have a, underlying business. So when potentially capital markets shuts down, that we've seen, even in August, as recently as August, we can continue to just focus on growing the underlying business, generate cash flow, and continue to stack Bitcoin at our own pace. So I think, a combination of those factors can appeal to more traditional investors.
And speaking of investors, I think you personally invested $3 million of your own capital into the company. Is that correct?
That's right.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. With regard to a message that you're trying to tell the street, I feel like that right there is just a testament to your own conviction and your own belief in the company as well.
Yeah, this is like the second time that I invested in DDC in 2025. I also increased my holdings earlier this year in March. But I think yeah, I think as a founder, it's important to align with your investors. And I feel like, when we go to fundraise and go to market and invite investors to join our journey at different valuations. I'm excited that I get to take part and be a part of that round, and just I just love sharing that alignment with my investors. But taking off my founder hat, I'm also just an investor in the market, and I used to be an equity research analyst for a number of years before I started DDC. So oftentimes, I do look at DDC from that perspective, right? And understanding exactly what we're trying to build here as the company, I just find it as a very compelling, entry point to kind of increase my exposure and ownership in a company that I have already spent 13 plus years building.
Love that so much. We hear oftentimes on this podcast and different people that we talk to in the industry that it's a bet on the management team, like who's leading the company. And I can see that you are definitely the bet here. And so it's nice to talk to you and hear your story behind it. And one
Thank
thing that I
you.
want to mention to our audience too is DDC achieved profitability and record high earnings in the first half of 2025. So huge congrats there. But I do want to ask, how did you balance the operational growth while also handling your major treasury shift and the Bitcoin accumulation strategy and everything that comes with that?
Yeah, I think our core business has been running for a number of years. Even though we kind of evolved over time. I mean, we started as a content creator and then content commerce, and then for the past 5 6 years really focusing on consumer food business. But the core food business is relatively like streamlined, and so it's kind of runs on itself and generates decent cash flow. um, and so I won't say the adding the Bitcoin treasury strategy distracts from it. In fact, I always repeat and share on different panels that I think having a growing, profitable underlying business is a great foundation for management team to kind of launch a Bitcoin treasury on top of it. So I kind of see them as, complementary to each other. And what I envision going forward is, as we continue to execute like very mindfully on the accumulation strategy, hopefully, when things are right, are done right, our share price potentially re-rates further, market cap expands, and liquidity improve on the stock, then our share becomes one of the most effective instrument for us to acquire even more, cash flow generating, profit generating businesses. So then, it's really interesting to then see the virtuous, cycle takes off. So yeah, hopefully, we see that come into play going to 2026. But yeah, I definitely think that they are complementary to each other.
Love it. I'm so excited to watch the growth of the company. I mean, we've been watching for quite a long time, and I just feel like 2026 is going to be the year of DDC. I cannot wait. I want to circle back because you mentioned a couple of questions ago with regard to your visionary council, so the Bitcoin Visionary Council. Can you tell us a little bit about how you formed such an amazing advisory council and what went into that? Who's working with you? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, super fortunate to have both Dave Chapman and Yatsu as part of our Bitcoin Visionary Council. Both Dave and Yat, they have such deep expertise and a lot of years of experience in both Bitcoin and crypto space, and they have definitely seen cycles. And when we look to them for just a lot of insights on what's happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem, understanding the latest, regulatory changes, and a lot of times we exchange notes in terms of like, what kind of best practices we see in the market. So yeah, they've been super helpful. And in particular, because they have built their own brand and their own very successful businesses in the crypto space for many, many years,
Mm.
they really help us build a strong network of partnerships. They make the instant connection with key decision makers for whatever organization that we want to get in touch with. So I think that is also super important on our longer term strategy. But yeah, I mean, to say the least, Dave and Yat are both super, super accomplished entrepreneurs in and itself, and they've built amazing businesses. So yeah, I'm truly appreciative that they are part of the DDC advisory network.
I love it. I can't wait to see all the teamwork that comes out of it. It's just going to be so exciting. One thing I've noticed is you've been speaking all over the place. Singapore, New York, you've been going back and forth. Can you talk a little bit? And I had the pleasure of seeing you speak in New York too, and everybody needs to tune in. If they're able to see you speak live or talk on a panel, I think that they should definitely be tuning in. But one thing I want to ask you is what's the core message that you want leaders to understand when they're hearing the term corporate Bitcoin strategy?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would like them to understand that it is something that shouldn't feel too unfamiliar. And, it should be something that all, I think, CEO and CFOs should spend time deeply to understand. Take time to study the history of money and understand why it is necessary to have Bitcoin as part of your strategy. I mean, you don't have to jump all in and go all out. But I think, the ultimate North Star vision is, Bitcoin should be a part of a company, both private and public's treasury, all around the world, right? And so I think, if you don't have, the knowledge now, it's probably important to spend time to study it and really to understand it is important to have some Bitcoin as a fiat hedge so that you are protecting your own business that you've spent so much time building and also protecting your shareholder value over the long term.
Love that. And I'm actually going to pivot to something that's a little bit fun because a lot of people that tune into communicating capital are either public relations executives or they're looking over communications and they're trying to figure out how do they communicate value to the street essentially. And so something that I saw that you did is that you ran a Bitcoin fortune cookie giveaway and other community driven campaigns. We love that from a public relations perspective. Can you just talk about why that type of grassroots connection is so important for a publicly traded company?
I really enjoy that one too, and I think we might do one soon. I can't wait for the next one. The response was great. I think Bitcoin is an emerging asset class, right? And the Bitcoin culture from the beginning has always been very, very community driven. There's a strong grassroots movement, and that's just the nature of Bitcoin. And when we're thinking about how do we engage with our community in a more fun way, right? Rather than just being, one-sided, sharing information and telling a narrative. I remember it was at a conference. I think it was at the Asia Bitcoin conference where we launched it for the first time, um, or was it at the New York Gun Conference? But one of the conferences, I was like, instead of just one-sided sharing something, I want it to be like, engaging and give something back to the community. And the team was thinking, oh, maybe we can, select some Bitcoin based like art or like some kind of giveaway that was Bitcoin related. And so I'm like, why not just give Bitcoin? And so I thought that was, like if I were one of the community members, and I thought that would be super fun and interesting. And it just kind of ties into our core, ethos, right? Where Bitcoin should be owned by every single company and every single individual. And I think that movement kind of speaks to, what we want to achieve as a company. And, DDC has always been community driven since day one. I mean, as I started 13 years ago as a content creator, it's all about, sharing what we're passionate about and having this kind of, engagement and interactions with our community members. So yeah, it was a really, really fun campaign. I'm glad you also picked up on it. And hopefully we'll do more.
We're excited to tune in on to more, and maybe we'll all participate on the next one as well.
Yeah.
Norma, this is going to be one of my favorite questions for you because we are pivoting the podcast over to be more about, I would say, female executives that work in finance or finance adjacent and or running publicly traded companies such as yourself. You are one of the few female CEOs at the forefront of crypto. It's a huge deal to be where you are today, especially for women like us who are looking at you and the way that you're succeeding, the paths that you're forging for us to perhaps follow. What message do you hope women in business take away from your journey?
Yeah, I think it's been awesome and very fortunate to be, I think, the first female founder-led listed Bitcoin treasury company in the world. It was kind of like, whoa, it is. Yeah, but I think, my message to women in business is similar to my general message to business leaders who have spent time in the Bitcoin treasury space. I think have an open mind to understand what Bitcoin is, why it exists, and why and what benefits it can bring to the monetary system and how it can be an alternative to just existing fiat monetary system. And I hope that they will, come to understand also that Bitcoin has a place in every single company's treasury as a way to protect shareholder value over the long term.
Love it. I love it so much. Norma, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your vision.
No, thanks for having me, Jessica. I'm really glad to be here.
It's been a pleasure. For our listeners who want to learn more about DDC, we'll have links in our show. Be sure to follow Norma and follow all things that she's doing. It's quite exciting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.